Hi, everybody. This is Doug McLennan. I'm an editor at Post Alley, and today I'm joined by Josh Labelle, Executive Director of the Seattle Theater Group, which programs the Paramount, Moore, and Neptune theaters, and Michael Greer, the newly arrived President and CEO of ArtsFund. Our topic is the state of the arts community in Seattle, 7 months after our stages, galleries, and performance spaces have shut down. Along with the hospitality industry, hotels and restaurants, probably no industry has been harder hit than the entertainment and arts sectors. Latest national figures show that 67% of workers in the arts are currently unemployed. That's, I think, even more of a significant number when you know that the cultural sector, which employs 5.2 million people and contributes almost $900 billion a year to the national economy, is the second largest sector in the US economy, second only to the hospitality industry, of course. So Michael, I'd like to start with you. At ArtsFund, because you work with almost all the region's arts organizations, you probably have the best overall view of how COVID and the shutdown has impacted the region's artists and arts organizations. ArtsFund has been doing heroic work in helping to coordinate survival funding to support the arts community. Can you give us an overview about how the community is doing?
I'd love to, Doug. Thanks very much for the introduction, and it's great to be on the call with Josh as well. The sector continues to be in a place that requires attention. I'll put it that way. I know that ArtsFund has been doing quite a number of surveys over the past 6 to 9 months since the pandemic began in order to kind of get an idea of where the sector is and where it needs help. And I want to reference a little bit the latest survey that we just did that came out in October, but to bring your number back closer to home, we found that here in King, Pierce, and Snohomish, 73% of the respondents that we surveyed had employees that were currently laid off or furloughed. So that's an even larger number than the national numbers. And interestingly enough, of those groups from April, only 9% of them had brought back workers. And so we're seeing these layoffs and these furloughs continue without a large number of workers coming back into the field. And one of the things that we are most concerned about, and Josh, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this later as well, is that there is the potential of some brain drain in the sector, and that people are leaving because of the duration of this pandemic and the duration of the closures, and they're finding jobs elsewhere, and rightfully so, because they need to eat and they need to pay rent. And we're very worried that we might be losing some really great talent in the sector. And we want to make sure that we are here as a sector to welcome them back when that's available. On a little bit of a silver lining, one of the interesting findings that we just came up with was that 100% of the groups that we surveyed are offering digital programming. And literally 100%, 93% were currently doing it, and another 7% were either doing it in the near term or had already been doing it. It was already part of their programming. And we thought that was really encouraging. That said, only 50% of that group was charging. And of the 50% that was charging, they were only charging about 40% of their in-person ticket prices. So that's a huge loss in terms of earned revenue to the sector. And again, we're seeing that across all disciplines and across all venues. So the sector is still in a place that it needs a lot of attention, particularly from our local, our local and our state officials. This is a question of, I would say that it's not a question of millions of dollars. Nationwide is a question of billions of dollars, right? And that is the scale of the sector and the scale of the situation that we're in right now.
Yeah. And I assume that it's not just a question of survival. It's a question of what is the wreckage afterwards, that you can repair or build on.
Well, I don't know if I would refer to it as wreckage, because I think that the institutions that are continuing through this are showing the resilience that is, characteristic of our sector, and that they are pivoting to some of these different models. The question is, how do we capitalize on these models after the pandemic, and how do we ensure that what is being created now stays in a way so that organizations can build on it in the future, on top of all of the fantastic programming that they've been doing for decades before.
Josh, I've always admired the entrepreneurial and imaginative way you've approached programming the theaters. You balance big popular shows that pay the bills and invest in art forms and projects that benefit from your promotion. A couple of weeks ago, though, you sent out an SOS appealing for help getting through the shutdown. And you wrote that since March, you've had to cancel or postpone over 500 performances. And since July, you've been 70% of your staff has been laid off. And then you wrote that, quote, if we're able to reopen in January 2021, we will experience a shortfall of $15 million. So two questions. First, how has the appeal gone for help? And second, given the latest state COVID numbers, it looks very likely that you won't be able to reopen in January. More realistically, it's likely to be next summer or fall. So what does that do for your plans?
So thanks, Doug. And probably best if we can use years. So I think that you may have been referencing a letter that we sent out to supporters, or I'm not sure if you were referencing a Seattle Times editorial that I wrote.
That was the letter that you had sent out by email.
Okay. So yeah, that was some time ago. If I'm correct, or I think we had a hopeful attitude that there could be a chance that in January of 2021, there was a chance of maybe reopening. Well, that's clearly not possible. To answer
Right.
one of your
Right.
direct questions with directness, not possible. I think we now have to face the possibility that we may not be able to open with full scale, meaning full capacity, as late as January of 2022. Mm-hmm. So we have to come up with business plans, strategies to maintain a presence, to maintain a service to our communities, hopefully to the artists as well, for a pretty darn prolonged closure. And at the same time, I maintain hope that, yeah, there's going to be a vaccine. We're going to get it distributed. We're going to get quick testing available, and, si se puede. Yes, we can. It is possible that, say, by late spring, maybe something's able to start happening. It's very difficult. It's very complicated. And it's leading an organization right now is just this interesting balance. On one hand, we've got a plan for the worst, for some really shitty long-term prolonged closure. On the other hand, we've got to maintain a hopeful standpoint and keep moving, and get ready for earlier opening.
What percentage of your budget is earned income, ticket income?
We're about 90%. So we rely heavily. Yeah,
what's interesting is that when people outside the arts talk about business models, they always give an extra sheen to that earned ticket income, which when you're in a situation like this, it basically all evaporates, right? But I've been hearing from a lot of arts organizations that have, significantly higher contributed income, that they're actually doing better in terms of donated funding than they are usually. Cornish last week raised $2 million, which is an all-time record for them. So it's ironic that you're doing all the great things in the normal times, but then that in some ways is a liability. How did your fundraising pitch go?
Our fundraising is coming along well. Our fundraising, a big key to it happened late last spring, in which we had our annual event, Doors, which raises money for greater access to the arts and our education community engagement programs. Which was terrific. But to say that this is going to be able to be sustained over a prolonged period of time, I'd be a little careful with that right now in terms of me predicting and saying fundraising is going great and we're going to sort this through. Yeah. I don't think so. I think it's important that we highlight things are starting to close down. I've not necessarily. I got an email from a staff member explaining to me just yesterday, so I've not been able to sort this through. So don't take this as I've done research yet, but Velocity is closing in 10 days, and several other dance organizations. Yeah. Holy shit, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And if fundraising is going so well, ¿qué pasó? What's up with that?
Well, I wanted to jump on that because, Doug, you mentioned the word better, and I think it's very important that we qualify for the readers and the viewers what better is. Right. Money is not better. The problem, I mean, these institutions are designed and built around their mission to distribute arts and culture to the community, and we are unable to do that. And irrespective of whether it's earned or contributed or what the model is, most of the institutions that are out there are unable to deliver on their mission in the ways that they were before. And so I think what's really important is that we pay attention to some of these new ways that they're able to deliver on that mission and to keep, as Josh just mentioned, to keep art and culture present in the community, because that is the real ultimate value add that we're providing to the community.
Right. Yeah. No, I wasn't meaning to imply that one is necessarily a better source of money. It's just that there has been an emphasis on earned income as an indicator of health, of popular support for what you do. So,
I mean, because you've referenced contributed revenue, I think it's important for the local community who may be watching this to make sure you know that Washington State has done zero.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even
our state government's done zero.
Well, and even Congress, the $300 million that they appropriated in the first thing was just a drop in the bucket based on what the size of the industry is. No, it's terrible.
I don't want to let our state get off the hook here. Oregon has found $50 million for arts and culture and artists.
The city of Berlin has contributed €1 billion to its arts organization.
So, yeah, well, listen, we're never going to be anywhere near Europe, but I'm sorry, Governor Inslee, it's time to prioritize this.
Yeah. Well,
and Josh, correct, it's not zero, it's 2. And that is the number. So just to be clear, if we're on the record, and if you divide that over the number of institutions and the scale of need, that we're talking about is just woefully inappropriate. And I'll just give a number just on the back of that. Back in April, when we gave out our COVID relief funding, We distributed approximately 5.5 million, 5.3, I believe. And we also interviewed and asked the question to all of our applicants, what percent of need does this represent? And they told us less than 5%. So you can work the math, and we're talking hundreds of millions in just King Pierce and Snohomish alone. So just to give an idea of the scale that we're talking about.
Right. Well, and national figures suggest that a quarter of museums nationwide won't be able to reopen again after this, and half of all music venues. There's been a bill in Congress for $10 billion to support local music venues around the country, and that's just not going anywhere. So, but maybe
wait, no, that's not true. Save Our Stages did pass the House. Now that's not much without the Senate.
So it didn't get through the Senate. They didn't even
Correct.
consider.
Correct.
So,
but it's going to in the next federal relief package. We will get SOS through. You watch.
I hope
we have to.
I hope that's true. Yeah.
There's not a choice.
Yeah.
I'm
just to change gears a little bit here. I'm struck about how some sectors of the economy are actually doing better in the slowdown. I mean, there are industries like grocery stores or home remodeling services, tree services, and of course, a lot of industries have used the shutdown to invest in new opportunities. We've all seen the reports of billionaires growing their fortunes over this time. And the same thing happened during the financial meltdown 10 years ago. There's actually a blueprint for kind of national disaster. And it seems like we didn't learn a whole lot from the last time this has happened. Have either of you seen places in the cultural sector locally that have figured out ways to get stronger or better during all of this?
Josh, I can jump in with some stats, and I won't say better, but one of the other areas that we're seeing some light is that through some of the digital programming, a lot of the organizations that are within our network are reaching new audiences. And those are audiences that are outside of their typical geography or new to their organization. And those are new audiences of color. Those are audiences that have, for whatever reason, felt that there were barriers to entry to some of the venues or some of the locations where the art was happening. And so we think that is a positive. Now, does that balance the scale of what is being lost? Absolutely not. But those are areas that we want to continue to support and figure out how ArtsFund and our community can continue to support the expansion into these new demographics, whether it's digitally or whether it's a combination of digital and in person when this pandemic eventually passes. Because we do think that there are benefits to what may come out of this in a perfect world is a broadening of access and a broadening of participation within arts and culture.
Josh,
I would agree with Michael, and we've seen by putting on much of our education community engagement programs online, we've seen a broadening of the participants, which is great. And I would expect that when things do return to in-person, that we would offer a combination of in-person and online, and let the patron decide what works best for them, and that's a wonderful thing. Anytime we can improve and broadening who's accessing arts, it's a terrific thing. Now, I'm gonna push back a little bit, and I would not be surprised in terms of performance if right out of the gate there's going to be a big holdback of online performances and artists saying, yeah, you don't get this anymore so fast online.
Right.
This is about in-person live experiences. And whatever we do online is going to be very different from in person into the future.
I have a theory about this. I mean, it actually developed before the whole shutdown thing, which is that that culture is so available digitally now, and we consume just acres and acres of it, that we have started to see in the last couple of years a kind of return to a yearning for that physical in-person experience, right? I liken it to the slow food movement, right? We had fast food, which was everywhere and standardized and, you know, easy, and everybody loved it. And a couple of years go by and people start to realize, it doesn't taste that good and it's not nutritious, and thus the slow food movement comes, and it's all about building culture around food and the provenance of it, the preparation of it, and all of that. And we've seen, you know, a rise in indie bookstores and, you know, vinyl records and et cetera, et cetera. And I think actually that there's going to have been, since our diet has been exclusively digital for most of us for a while, there's going to be an explosion of demand for actually being back together in that festival experience, that unique experience, that in the theater experience.
I want to just put a caveat on that, though, is that it's going to be a while, and this just really this gets to the heart of the need and the prolonged nature of the need for the sector. Most organizations are looking, Josh, as you just mentioned, this is 22, and maybe, you know, fall of 21 or 22, and even at that stage, many organizations are only assuming a between 60 and 80% return rate on what was previously, you know, not 100% full houses. So, you know, it's going to take a couple years in order for audiences to really feel like they are in a safe space and wanting to return to these, you know, these packed halls. And we need to prepare for that. Because, you know, in our latest survey, we had like 66% of people had a safety in the spaces as their top concern for any reopening. And we know that is going to linger. Many of our institutions, the average age of their participants and the average demographic is squarely within a target risk rate for COVID. And so we know that it is going to take some time in order to ramp back up, and we will need the public support throughout that entire time. So this is not going to be a switch that we flip back on and everything is back to normal. It is going to take time to ramp up.
Sure. I'm struck looking historically after major events like pandemics or major wars. You know, the flu pandemic in 1917 changed public hygiene laws, how buildings were built, a lot of social norms. 9/11 changed how airports are designed. Oftentimes coming out of disaster of one sort or another that affects everyone, there's a kind of a bloom of creativity and culture. Almost like we've all gone through this big life-changing experience and how we see the world differently, and we want to express it. Seattle's been kind of an it city for a while. Everybody wants to be here, and we've had this enormous growth. And one of the things that's interesting to me about the creativity here is that it spans so many areas. You know, biotech, aerospace, technology, global health. And even before the pandemic, we were starting to ask, what does it mean to live here and to work here? You're both sort of major figures in the cultural scene here. Do either of you get a sense of where the post-pandemic creative energy is going to come from?
Well,
It's all you.
After you, Michael.
I'm letting you take this one.
Well, listen, all the energy, our entire business, what Michael and I, what you do is 100% reliant upon artists, period.
Right.
All the energy post-pandemic is going to be about what artists want to express, want to do. And I would be a fool to try to predict what that's going to look and sound and feel like. And I'm very hopeful and very excited because I do have through working at SDG, I've got a good sense of just how busy artists want to be when things return. And to share here, we have to get a show moving, a booking happening. It starts with an offer. We make an offer to an artist. We have in excess of 500 offers sitting out there unconfirmed right now. And a lot of that is artists soliciting us saying, okay, I'd like to come. How about this time period? And that is a huge number for us to have out in the marketplace at any given time. So I would hope that there's going to be a lot of options for arts patrons. Things are going to get really busy. And then Michael's correct. We'll see we'll see who wants to return patron-wise to the theater.
Right.
There may be demographic differences. We may see young people feeling more comfortable coming out. A lot of people believe the music industry is going to be busier than it's ever been in the first 12 months upon return. And then people are concerned about older audiences. I don't know. I think people are people and they're going to want their art and buckle up.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, Doug, and I agree with everything that Josh just said, and to take it a little bit broader, because I don't know if that's where your question was going, but what we're hoping for is a continued normalization of art and culture. And that is beyond just these quote unquote traditional spaces of art and culture, so that people can start to understand. One of the things that I think is coming out of this pandemic is the way that art and culture has been integral to keeping people sane, to being able to express themselves through a lot of the social justice and social upheaval that we've been feeling with Black Lives Matter, and with some of the isolation that everyone is dealing with. So what we're hoping for at ArtsFund and trying to bring to the forefront of a lot of these conversations is that arts and culture throughout this 2020 has played a significant role in how people are getting through this, and to take that with them into 2021 and beyond. And that is a very lofty aspiration, but I think it ties back to the practicality of funding, of who's going to our shows, and the way that we interpret the importance of arts and culture, not just localized to our theaters and to our stages, but in the way that we live our everyday lives. And so that's what I'm hoping comes from this, is a broader awareness of how arts and culture fits in to our day-to-day, whether you're at Google or Boeing or Microsoft or Amazon, or if you're at PNB or the Opera. So.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Today we've been talking with Michael Greer from ArtsFund and Josh Labelle from STG. Thank you very much, guys.